Hey everybody, today I'm going to be taking a look at 10 new to me board games, sharing my overall thoughts on the games and just to give you, an impression, were they good, were they bad, and should you give them a play. So I'll start at the bottom and I'll work my way up to the top and give a numerical rating to them too. But before I get started on the 10 games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, keyender.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer. And if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. But let's start right at the bottom with Savannah Tales. So this is an older card-driven racing game, as you and your opponents are taking the role of these ostriches, and you're going to be racing through these modular tiles trying to get to the end before your opponents do. And you're going to do that by playing cards from your hand. Now, the unique mechanism in this game is just that. It is certainly unique, but I'm not quite sure I like it. So basically, each card has a number on it, but it also has a colour assigned to it. And when you play these cards, you'll move that number of spaces, but you have to end on a track matching the colour of the card. Now, you can kind of stay on a different track, but as long as you end your final movement point onto the coloured card or the colour matching your card, then you're fine. And it's just, I don't know, it just feels a little bit clunky and a bit overwrought and not as clean as it could be. You can use it in somewhat clever ways to avoid these obstacles and things by staying on the track until the last minute and then kind of veering in and so on. There are different obstacles in the way, which I mentioned, which will stop you dead in your tracks or make you schedule cards, like single track runways and so on. A lot of things you'd expect with a racing game. But I think that the competition is a bit too strong in the racing genre at the moment. There's a lot of good racing games out there. This one, I think it feels a little bit dated and not in a good way at all. Again, a little bit overwrought and not as smooth or as elegant as it could be. And just explaining that track moving mechanism, although it's simple overall, it just doesn't quite feel satisfying. So this one I can't really recommend. I'm not saying it's awful, but there's just other games that I'd play over Savannah Tales. So that one I gave a very, very modest 4 out of 10. Next up, Llama. So this is actually a big, colossal hit from Rainer Knizia. A big fan of Knizia games. This one is probably one of the lightest games of his that I've ever played. It's kind of a mass appeal card shedding style game, as you're given a bunch of cards which range from I think 1 to 6, and then also like a llama card, and all you're doing is you're throwing cards onto a pile in turn order. You can throw a matching number down or one higher. If you can't do that, you can kind of either pass out of the round or you can draw more cards. Now, drawing more cards is dangerous because if anybody gets rid of their cards, then you will be stuck with those cards and you'll kind of gain points, which is a bad thing in this game, equal to each of the cards you have. So sometimes you can tactically or strategically duck out of the round. Maybe if you're just left with a 1 or a 2 in your hand, taking 2 points is not a bad thing at all. Or of course, do you want to risk it? And do you want to draw another card and hope it works out that way? Now there is a small kind of little quirk on the game as well, where if you do shed your cards before the other players do, then you can actually get rid of a score token back into the supply. And because the score tokens come in denominations of 1 or 10, when you gain 10 points and you win a round by shedding all your cards, you can get rid of one whole 10-point chip. So it's quite a nice little catch-up mechanism. If you're falling too far behind, you can get rid of a whole chunk of change in one single action. So the game's fine. It pretty much just plays itself. Again, I do like that idea of do I back out or do I push my luck and keep going? But overall, this game is wafer thin in terms of its decision space. And while I would play it because it is turn your brain off, takes 10 minutes, it's not really one that I would lean for, which is rare because I'm normally a big fan of Knizia games, as I said. So this one, again, another 4 out of 10 for me. Next up, Littlewood. So this is an older Michael Schott game, and to be honest, I've not played this much yet. And I think maybe a reason for this being lower is because it's not exactly what I expected it to be. But the more I thought about this one since playing it, I think this one does have some potential. So this one, simple kind of card shedding style game as you're trying to build runs of the same number. Play a bunch of 4s down, a bunch of 5s down, whatever. The quantity of cards in the deck matches the number of those cards. So there's 4 4s, there's 5 5, there's 6 6s. And basically at the end of the game, if you have the longest run of each type, you'll score that many points. But there is an incentive to play shorter runs, because if you do, you will gain one of these extra cards or bonus cards from the central display, which is another way of getting points, because you will multiply your different kind of, I think they're flowers or fruit or something. You'll multiply those, the different types, with the quantity of one type that you have. So I like the way there's like 2 polarizing scoring mechanisms that actually do kind of repel off each other. I kind of like that little conundrum you have to get over. And again, I do want to play this one some more before I kind of cement my thoughts. But as an initial impression, I thought it was good, but I was a little bit underwhelmed. But again, as time has gone by, I might start to appreciate that simplicity. So at the moment, I'm sitting at a 5 out of 10, but this one does have some potential to go up. Next up, Floristry. Now this is Floristry, not Floristry, which is another game that's out at the moment. This is a 2-player kind of a bidding, Dutch auction mechanism game where you're placing these dominoes on your little personal display. These dominoes come with flowers on them, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to create chains of the same flower type. The bigger the group, the more points you'll get. Now the twist in this game, as I mentioned, is that you are doing a Dutch auction in order to acquire these tiles. So each round there will be 4 tiles up for grabs, and then you'll use an app with your opponent, and the app will basically time down, going for 5, 4, 3, 2, and when one person pulls their finger off, that's how much they're willing to pay for 3 out of those 4 tiles. The other player will get the remaining tile, and so on. Then you'll start populating your little display of dominoes. I do like the restrictions in this game where you do have a frame and you have to stay within that frame, so you can't just keep sprawling off where you like. Additionally, I do love the way that this game incentivizes being a bit frugal with your money, because at the end of the game, the difference in money between you and your opponent will mean more points. If you've been very efficient with how much money you're spending, you'll get rewarded for that. So I do like that as an additional touch. Again, it's pretty straightforward. You're just simple tile placement, very simple domino, matching symbol to symbol, but it's fine. I think the 2 mechanisms, the domino placement with the auctioning, do work well together. Of course, if you don't like app-assisted games at all, then you might bounce off this one, but it's simply just an aid to the game, and I think it actually works really well. Nice and simple, super fast as well, only takes around 15 minutes, it's only 10 rounds I believe. So again, pleasant, but it feels like you've seen everything before, doesn't do anything to wow you, so another 5 out of 10 for me when it comes to Floristry. Let's go to Ra and Write. So this is, as it sounds, this is the flip and write version of the classic Knizia game Ra. Unlike the original Ra, this one doesn't use an auction, it is simply drafting. So each round, the active player is going to have 3 cards in front of them. They're going to draw from this massive stack of cards. The cards will all associate to a different scoring mechanism, or will be a Ra card. The Ra is going to be the countdown to the end of the round. As soon as 3 Ra cards are drawn, you will score that current epoch. At the end of 3 epochs, it'll be, the winner will be determined. Now, the scoring mechanisms are very similar to the original Ra. So, for example, if you have the most pharaohs, you'll score like 5 points. If you have the fewest, you'll lose points. Set collecting the different monuments. You're kind of using this little number track. You're trying to go up and increase your numbers as you go. There isn't a different mechanism in the game where you are collecting these kind of god number cards, which has this little push your luck mechanism, because if you commit to these things, you only have 3 slots per round. So, do you want to commit to, say, a mid or lower valued number, or do you want to wait till a higher number comes out, but that higher number might never come out? So I do quite like that, but I have to say, despite me liking the flow and the speed of this game, I do think the different scoring categories are somewhat imbalanced. Each time I've played this, that first category which I mentioned, which was scoring these number cards, that's always been the difference maker. So, normally, I think 4 out of 5 of these categories, there's a few points in it. On that first category, there could be like 20-point swings, which can definitely decide the game, even in round 1. Now, something that I do actually really like about this game, that I didn't think I was going to like was this idea that the Ra cards are completely scattered randomly in that deck. They're not tiered or anything like that, so you can have these longer rounds or you can have lightning fast rounds. And I thought that might just be a little bit too random, a little bit too chaotic and maybe unfulfilling at times. But in actuality, I actually do like that sudden death feel, and it does feel like the round can end any time, so it kind of puts a bit more pressure on the players and what they want to do and how they want to kind of push forward in those different categories. But all in all, I think it's a pleasant game, another good one. It's certainly nowhere near as good as the original. Again, I've got some slight concerns, excuse me, some slight concerns over the balance of the game in terms of the different scoring categories. But I think the game is fast enough to forgive that, and it doesn't, you don't feel disgruntled because it's over before you know it. So again, it's fine. I will play it some more. It might even grow on me. But I think if I'm being truly honest with myself, I don't think it's going to hold up long term. I'm always going to find myself going back to the original Ra. So that is Ra and Right. I'd give that one about a 5.5 out of 10 at the moment. Staying on the Knizia Caravan, we're going on to Cosmo Lancer. So this is a reprint of an older Knizia game, certainly abstract in its feel, as you and your opponents are populating this grid. Either of these tiles, which will have kind of positive or negative point values on them, or of your little camera tokens. Now, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get your camera tokens in the best rows and columns of the most positive points, because the points are going to get multiplied by the strength of the camera. And these cameras come in different strengths. Are they going to be a ×2er? Are they going to be all the way up to like a ×3, ×4, ×5, and so on? But of course you have to be careful because there are a lot of negative points in the mix. And if you get your higher multipliers in those rows and columns, you're going to take a big hit of negative points. And there are also some bonus tokens you can use that really do kind of throw a spanner in the works in terms of creating blockages or doubling the value of that row or column and so on. So it does have a nice little tactical feel to it. As the board populates, you're trying to navigate and put your tokens in the best place. And I do like the way that more and more information is drip fed throughout the round. Now, while I like that part of it, especially in the later half of the round, it does feel like in the first half of the round, you aren't really basing your decisions off much at all. You're either drawing a tile, placing it on the board, obviously putting the positive ones near your tokens and the negative ones to your opponents, and so on. So it kind of feels like it's a little bit ethereal, not really knowing what you're doing. But as I said, as the board starts to populate and your decisions run out, or the space you can place runs out, that's when it becomes more interesting. It can be a little bit mean because, again, you are deliberately sabotaging your opponent's efforts by putting the negative point tokens on the same rows and columns as their big multipliers. And of course, they're doing the same to you. But again, I do like you can't completely bully someone because that board does get populated so quickly. So I think some people are maybe more purist-minded board gamers are going to like this one a lot because there aren't really many bells or whistles. There are no fiddly rules, no exceptions, no little rules minutiae, anything like that. It's pretty clean, but at the same time, it is bone dry, so be prepared for that as well. So, I liked it. I can certainly appreciate it from a design standpoint, but it feels like I've played it a few times now. I'm not really sure what else I have to discover with it. It's not really a game with any hidden nooks or crannies. You can take it at face value. So I sit this one at a 6 out of 10. An objectively good design, but one that I think the fun factor is capped, and I think the incentive to go back to it is capped as well. I don't think the lure is really there for me, but still a good game. Next up, Creature Caravan. This one is a game I've had my eye on for some time. Now, luckily a friend of mine picked this one up. Now this is it's like a resource management tableau builder where you are traversing through this really long board, a gridded board, going from one end to the other, kind of reaching pit stops along the way, and again, building an engine of cards. Now, the way the game works is pretty interesting because a lot of it is like pure simultaneous. You can roll your dice, you're placing your dice on different actions, but all the other players, your opponents can do whatever they want at the same time, because the interaction is bare minimum in this game. Now, these different actions are pretty straightforward. Moving your caravan into the next square, getting resources, drawing more cards, and so on. As I said, you are committing to building an engine of cards by paying the costs, playing them in front of you, which will give you kind of ongoing benefits, little synergies and so on, or even new worker placement spots to make your actions more efficient, gaining more resources to buy more powerful cards, making you travel faster, and so on. Now, I actually really do like the feel of this game, and I think that simultaneous play massively goes in its benefit. The downtime is next to nothing here. I will say, a slight nitpick with it. I think that the game is kind of on rails. It seems like you are kind of forced to make a decision on basing your strategy on one or two keywords, and then hoping that all those keywords go together, because some of these cards might say, we'll get X amount of points for this keyword you have at the end of the game, and then you get that keyword, and might say, well, get more movement for each of one of these keywords you have. So again, the cards kind of feel like they're playing themselves, and the decisions are fairly obvious, in my opinion. And the game seemed to have a similar arc each time. Spend the first few rounds building a money engine, then commit to a keyword or two, and then spend the rest of the game just moving along, feeding off your engine. So again, I didn't feel terribly challenged by the game at all. That being said, I enjoy it. I think it's a very nice, well ironed out game. And there is a lot of variety as well with the cards. Some of the powers are super cool, but again, I didn't really feel like I was being pulled in a bunch of different directions, because the cards that I had were like no-brainers. I was obviously going to play this one. I knew I wasn't going to play this card because it didn't meet my engine at all, so I'd get rid of that one for money and so on. So again, some good hand management, but some pretty obvious hand management. The race aspect is pretty much, it takes a back seat to a lot of the other card play, but a nice visual appeal. There is a good amount of tension as well when it comes to fighting these monsters, because when you land on certain spots, you'll have to fight these monsters, which is like another little scoring mechanism in the game. You can fight monsters of various strengths, but once you do, you can kind of claim that strength for yourself, which means your other opponents are under pressure to fight that same strength monster before they are locked out of doing so. So that's where the interaction is in the game, and it kind of feels a little bit forced, but not necessarily in a bad way. But all in all, again, I think it's a good game. I think a lot of Gateway Plus level gamers are going to like it, and it's a good introduction to some card synergies. But all in all, I didn't really feel like there was like layers to unravel. It was pretty obvious on what you should be doing, and by the end of it, there's going to be a few points in it depending on which cards you draw. Simple as that. But still, a nice game, but not a great game. I'd put this one at about a 6.5 out of 10. Next up, we are going into Naishi. So this is a game I picked up on a complete whim. I didn't know anything about this one. I bought it when I was in America. I thought I liked the look of it. This is another little tableau builder. It's a head-to-head game, so it's only 2 players. And you are building a 5x2 grid of cards. Now, the twist on this game is that the 5 cards in the table, you've got your own 5 cards. They are obviously visible to your opponent, but your bottom row of 5 cards are the 5 cards in your hand. So you do not actually have any scope to rearrange these cards, at least not as a free action. You can't just willy-nilly skip your cards around. You have to very deliberately maneuver cards around. Now, these cards do score in pretty straightforward ways. You want your fortresses on the edges of your tableau. This particular card wants to be in the middle. This one wants to be next to cards of the same type, and so on. So all very simple, straightforward set collection stuff, but it's all about the maneuverability and taking opportunities, because not only are you managing your hand of cards, there is a central display of cards which you can kind of chop and change, draw this one, discard this one, and so on. So it's all very meticulous. It's a bit of a dance, really, and you do need to plan ahead, because if you have an immediate decision you want to make, you might have to prep a turn in advance, because you can't just again, move things to exactly where you want them to go. They have to line up to where they are in the tableau, which I think is a really nice little twist. So super fast. There can be a little bit of interaction in terms of grabbing cards that your opponent wants, or even sabotaging their tableau a little bit. There's only one opportunity to do that, but it is there. It looks very nice. I do like the way you have to act tactically to the cards in your hand. You're not always going to be able to go for the same thing simply because those cards aren't available. And it's just a nice, elegant, stripped back little tableau builder, which, again, it feels kind of delicate and subtle in its nature. So maybe if you like games like Hanamakoji or games like that, this one, although mechanisms-wise they're very different, it does have that kind of sophisticated gameplay, which I like. So nothing crazy here, no big swings or anything like that, but it's just a bit of a delicate back and forth, getting things into the right positions and hoping you outwit your opponent. So my kind of game, and I give this one a 7 out of 10. Next up, another game I picked up in America. This is Timber Town. So this is another 2-player only game, and this is certainly a game that has a lot of competition in terms of similarity to other designs, because it's one of those games where you're giving a bunch of objectives and you are building up your own little village of these tiles, all of which have different colours, and all those colours score in different ways. So this tile might say will score X amount of points for each different colour surrounding it, or every adjacent tile of the same colour, and so on. So think of something like Cascadia, Calico. They all kind of score in these different ways. This game has that, but it's more of a traditional tile placement game. And the twist on this game is kind of embedded in the theme. These are all based on these little beavers, a little beaver village you're making. And you're actually drafting these tiles from this central display. But this central display actually shifts down in this kind of like conveyor belt system. And when you draft these tiles from the center, much like Naishi actually, they have to go in the matching column of your personal board as well. So if I'm drafting from the second column from the middle, it'll have to go on my player board in the second column. So this adds this really nice tension to the game where I want this tile, but I don't want it until two turns time, when it's 2 spaces further down the track. But at the same time, my opponent might want it before then. So, do I wait for it? Do I spend one of my reserve tokens to secure it for myself? Or do I even spend one of these bonus tokens which you can collect in order to break those rules? I love the way that all these different scoring mechanisms butt heads with each other. The board very quickly gets congested, so you can't exactly optimize everything, especially when it's based on that conveyor belt system. And I even love this this kind of key mechanism to the game where all of these tiles will have a little pathway on them, and if you can connect one pathway or the pathway from one side of the board to the other, and you populate them with these beavers, which is another kind of action you can take, you'll get some bonus points. So there are kind of layers of the tile placement here. When you take them, where you take them from, where you're going to put them, do the tracks build on, or do the tracks connect? And of course, does that sabotage other scoring that you're trying to do? So you are spinning a lot of plates in this game, and all in all, it's just a lovely package. And despite not doing anything terribly innovative, apart from the drafting mechanism itself, I think this one is actually one of the kind of 4 runners of this genre. So there's a lot of games like this, as I said, your Cascadias, all these kind of games. This one I think might be my favourite one at the moment. So there's one small nitpick I have with the game, and that is actually maybe a way that I want to punish myself more with it, because I think the game can be a little bit too forgiving at times, because it does give you this option to place these bonus markers to create new pathways. And for me, that kind of hurts itself, because it makes the game a little bit too easy, and it means you can ignore some of those pathways, which for me is one of the most interesting parts of the game. So I would have liked it if it kept that part. And to be honest, when I play this from now on, I just completely house rule that, and I remove that mechanism from the game completely. And I just think, you are stuck with the pathways on these tiles. Can you make it work, or can you not? But what a lovely little 2-player game Tons of variety as well, because it has loads of different scoring cards. So each game you play is going to be different. And yeah, what a lovely game to play in 30 minutes or so. Wonderful to look at, really high quality production. And I think this just ticks a lot of boxes for me. So that is Timber Town, another 7 out of 10 for me. And the final game I'm talking about today is Tag Team. So Tag Team, getting a bit of buzz at the moment, and this is actually the first auto battler game that I've played. This is another 2-player only head-to-head game where you are trying to knock out your opponent. And the way you do that is that at the start of the game, each player is going to have 2 characters which are completely unique. They have their own strengths and weaknesses. And what you're going to do is you are going to shuffle, or in fact you're going to choose their 2 starting cards and put them in any order. And your opponent will do the same. And then what you're going to do simultaneously with your opponent is you're going to flip over the top card. They're going to flip over their top card, and you're going to resolve the actions on them. And they can be things such as, attack your opponent, or block their attack, or maybe use a special ability, or maybe attack their tag team partner, and so on. You're going to resolve that one, and you're going to move on to the next card and do the same. But when the whole deck has been played through, you are going to draw the next 3 cards from your main deck, pick one of them, and slot that card somewhere in that existing deck you have. Do you want to put it at the top, at the bottom, or in the middle? And of course, you are trying to consider what your opponent might be doing. Perhaps they punched you the first time last time, so you might want to put your block card right on top. But of course, your opponent might know that and kind of use that double think against you and keep on, do something else instead. But that, on top of the unique abilities of the different characters, it just makes for a really fascinating game design where, yeah, the game does, kind of 70% play itself, but you can influence the game enough to make a difference. I love the variety of characters in this game, and one thing that I was concerned about was that maybe it would be a bit too much of an information dump when it came to the differences of these characters. A big kind of turn off for me with these types of games is that you're just given like a player card. It has a ton of rules on them, and it's just too much labor to really work out what the characters do, how different they are. And of course, each time you play, you're given different characters, and you have to learn it all over again. This one, although the characters are all unique, you can learn all their unique abilities in about 30 seconds. So I really do like that, and kind of my main concern about the game was immediately relieved when I played it. It's just a super fun game. It only takes around 15 minutes. Again, although it is very confrontational in terms of just wailing on each other, again, because you are just sitting back and watching the fight play out, it doesn't really feel like super head-to-heady. It doesn't feel like you've been shattered if you lose, and it doesn't really give you that scope to feel disgruntled. It just has this nice, light, fluffy, kind of just fun factor to it. And some of these are kind of like sudden death abilities to the characters as well. It just adds a whole new level of fun as well. You can just capture your kind of opponent off guard and do something they wouldn't be able to predict. And again, it just adds a whole new level element of surprise to the game. So if you like programming style games, you'll like this. If you like these little dueling style games, you'll probably like this. Just be prepared that you're not really in the weeds with this game. You are just kind of sitting back and just seeing how it plays out. Again, you do have just enough scope to steer it how you like. And it is on you if you make those mistakes, but you're not going to feel too hard done by if the cards work against you. So that is a Tag Team. I think this one is going to be a blockbuster hit. It has a wonderful art style, so easy to jump into, and I think it has a nice broad appeal to it. So, and it's unique. I've not played a game like this before, so in my collection, there's nothing else I can really compare it to. So I like that. When I've played so many games, it's always nice to play something that feels completely different to anything else. So that is a Tag Team, and I've given that one a 7.5 out of 10. So that concludes the video. Hopefully you have enjoyed it. I'll probably be doing most of my reviews like this from now on. So yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you have, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel, and check out my other content too. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye-bye.